let's get started. We have a lot of people on the call, which is really exciting. Welcome, everyone. My name is Monique Bainatan. I'm on the Brigade team at Code for America. I'm also joined by Christopher Whitaker, who's also on the Brigade team at Code for America. And we have a lot of really special guests here today, and we're really excited to get started and to talk about National Day. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. Great. Cool. So this is our second National Day of Civic Hacking Planning workshop or webinar. National Day is less than a month away, so we wanted to be sure that we were getting together and talking about the resources that we offer and making sure that we had some brigades share really great resources and really great information that they have. And so today we're really excited to have Tabitha from Code for Atlanta here. She's going to be talking about the process that Code for Atlanta has used to get community partners in the door for large events such as these. They've done a really, really great job at getting community partners to attend their events, and so I just thought it'd be a really great chance for her to talk through the process that they've used and things that worked, things that haven't worked, and maybe any challenges that they've seen, but they've definitely had a lot of success with that in the past, so that's really awesome. We also have Mateo and Charles from Open Austin who are here. They're going to be sharing, sorry, really loud trucks. They're going to be sharing the process that they've used for their Civic Tech Project Planning Canvas. I was actually in Austin in March to frame a really awesome design thinking workshop that they led. And it's just a really great tool that you can use to make sure that the projects that you are creating are really well informed and that they're set up for success in terms of sustainability. And yeah, just having the right people around the table working on that project. So they're going to be sharing a little bit about that, which we're really excited to have them do. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. I already did the introductions. A lot of you are familiar with National Day already, but we'll just sort of do a recap of some of the high-level goals that we at Code for America have for National Day. And then we'll talk about some resources that we have for you all. Just a quick recap of the website, because I know it looks really different from last year. Some marketing materials that we have. What exactly are we going to be sending out for swag? And then there's also an event planning timeline that we created that we just sort of wanted everyone to know that it's there in case you want to use it. And of course, you can use it for future events as well. And then, of course, Tabitha, Mateo, and Charles are going to do sort of their deep dives on what has worked really well for their brigades. And we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. You can post them in the chat so that you don't forget them, and Christopher and I will be sure to address them at the end. Okay, so this is our fourth National Day of Civic Hacking. We're really excited this year because coordination was completely passed on to us, which is really fantastic. I think it's just really telling of how strong the Brigade network is and all the great work that you do. We're still working with our partners who are NASA and Second Muse to make this event happen. So again, I know a lot of you are really familiar with National Day, but just sort of to recap some of the high-level goals that we had this year for National Day. We wanted to make sure that we were using the weekend to highlight our collective impact. A lot of you know the brigade network is really big. It's very geographically dispersed. There's a lot of brigades of different sizes and different ages. And so sometimes it's hard for us to keep track of everything that we're doing. And events such as these are just a really great way for us to be working on something at the same time. And we can measure our collective impact, and we can also just feel the momentum of all the people that are around us and feel like we're a part of something bigger. We've also been working really closely with our marketing team, and we want to make sure this year that we're highlighting the great work that you're doing at the local level, taking advantage of the fact that we're a national organization and using that to sort of surface the great work that you're doing within your cities. So, if you're launching something for National Day, be sure to let us know, because we're going to be doing a lot of work after National Day to sort of compile all of that data and share it out with our networks. And then we've also been working really closely with our focus area leads to develop challenges to help us specifically showcase the state of digital government in America. So, we want government to work for everyone, and the only way that we can do that is if we're working across various communities in different cities. And so we specifically put together these challenges to help us really understand what the state of digital government is within those focus areas. And so if you have someone at your brigade who's interested in doing that, it'll be a really great challenge for you to give them. And we're going to have a separate webinar that's specifically related to the focus area challenges and the technical challenges that we have. And then finally, National Day and Code Across and big days of actions such as these are just a really great way to help brigades fundraise locally. The first National Day of Civic Hacking Planning webinar that we had about a month ago was focused on fundraising. So we had Akezia from Jersey City and Jesse from San Francisco come in and talk about some strategies and tactics that they've used. Akezia shared some really great templates. And so if you didn't have a chance to catch that webinar a month ago, I recommend the recording and the slides, and they're linked in this presentation in case you missed it. And then, of course, we wanted to, again, just remind you that your local goals are really important, and whatever you choose to focus on is completely all right. We want to support you in whatever work that you do. But we know a lot of you have sort of built prototypes during Code Across, and so National Day is a really great way for you to push those further into alpha or beta. And then it's a really great way to educate your community of the importance of civic hacking and maybe try and increase your brigade attendance. These are things that we've heard a lot of different people talking about. And, we want to be able to hopefully after National Day have a conversation around using these big events to sort of do outreach and recruitment and to try and increase your brigade attendance. So we know this is something that a lot of you are thinking about, and we know that a lot of you are going to be using different tactics to be able to do that during National Day, and we'd love to hear about it after, and we want to have a discussion about it after National Day. And then, of course, what's at the heart of the brigade program is providing a space to find creative solutions to your local issues in your community. And last but not least, anything else your brigade identifies as being important, you're experts in your cities. And so it's really, we leave it up to you to sort of identify what is the best thing to work on, and we totally support you in those efforts. I think, for example, Maine is, their National Day of Civic Hacking is just focused on transportation, which is great. So please register your event. It's less than a month away, and a lot of people are looking. We've sort of gotten a lot of inquiries from individuals who want to engage and they want to attend in an event, but they don't know what events exist or where they're located or whatnot. So if you register your event, then we can sort of point them in the right direction. Actually, I have it loaded already. So I just sort of really briefly wanted to go over the site because I know it looks really different from Hack for Change, which is what we had last year. Hack for Change will directly link to, or it will directly redirect to this page. And so this is our National Day of Civic Hacking page. It's really great. You can search events and they'll come up. If you register your event, it'll come up on this map and people can search. These are the challenges that we have. So if you have members who come in who don't necessarily know what to work on and they're looking for something to do, you can point them here and they can sort of pick and choose the ones that they want to work on that might be interesting to them. And then just a quick overview of the resources. We have a lot of marketing resources. We actually changed the logo a little bit. It's just much cleaner and maybe less. The last one was a little crazy. But anyways, yeah, we just did some minor changes and you have access to all of those. And then we also have Brigade Media Tips. We'll actually be hosting a press webinar with our marketing team next week, in 2 weeks. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask them then. Cool. So yeah, so I mean, I pretty much went over this, but there's a lot of resources available for you to organize your event. Akezia and Jesse's presentation is linked here. This checklist and timeline is really great. Victoria from Open Austin helped our event planner sort of lay this out. So it's just a really great tool to go through it and just to make sure that you have all the bits and pieces that you need to put together a really great event. Cool. So just a recap of the webinars that we're hosting. We're only hosting 3 more before National Day. The first one is going to be this coming Tuesday, and it's going to be with our focus area teams in health, safety, and justice and economic development. And then, so they're going to be speaking about the challenges that are specifically related to the focus areas. And then we'll also be doing an overview of the technical challenges that we have. Like I mentioned before, we're going to have a press webinar with our marketing team. And then on the 25th, we're going to have the White House lead a webinar. They're going to be specifically talking about their data at work challenge that they have launched. And so we're happy to have them on. They're going to be sharing a lot of context and a lot of research on why this is an important challenge to work on. And it'll also be a really great opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might have to sort of be able to make sure that your brigade members know exactly what they're doing and that they're doing it right. Links to some past webinars in case you missed them. There were only 2 ones that we had that were specifically pertaining to National Day. So you can check those out if you missed them. I know there's a few new brigade leaders on this call, so feel free to browse through those. And with that, I wanted to pass it on to Tabitha, who is from Code for Atlanta, who has led a lot of the outreach for community partners.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tabitha, and I'm just going to go through briefly what Code for Atlanta has done to reach out to community partners and how we actually kept ourselves organized so that we can be successful at getting them there, getting volunteers involved, and then I'm also going to share with you what we had difficulty in doing during the event. And I'll ask the question pretty much to get your ideas on how you would have solved that problem. But I'm going to give you some information on what I believe that we will be doing for this new event coming up in June to actually make sure that our community partners get engaged. So how do we get the partners involved? We actually have a successful Civic Hack Nights, which we have once, well, actually twice a month, one on Monday night and one on Tuesday night. And we actually have kind of like a round robin, which we actually have people introduce themselves and tell us what organizations they're part of. So that actually gives us an idea of who's out there in our community, who is connected to what organization or what business. And what we did was we worked with people we actually knew. For example, one of our brigade leaders, she's actually connected to an Atlanta bicycle community organization. So that was one of the organizations that actually became involved with Code Across Atlanta. And there are several other organizations that our brigade leaders were involved with that actually we actually reached out to, and they actually supported the event. Another thing that we did, we listed a lot of the project partners that we went out to so that we can keep track of who we're going out to, what were their replies, so that we don't crisscross. That is one of the things that we did. We created a spreadsheet and we placed it in Google Docs, and that helped us stay pretty much so on target, and we knew who we need to follow up with and what we actually need to get for them. We can move to the next slide. And the partners who said yes, what did we do next? We actually went through the project ideas that they submitted. And the key here for us was to make sure that the projects they submitted, it was actually created so so a prototype can be built within an event timeframe. We had 2 days to run Code Across Atlanta to build a prototype for that particular organization. We had seven partners who joined us, and out of seven, one actually had a project that was that was more appropriate for their internal IT team. So that was the other thing we looked for. We made sure that if they submitted a project idea, it was actually appropriate for the event itself. We didn't want to become their IT team. So that was one of the things that we did. And another thing that we did after we took a look at the projects, we gave the okay, the green light to the community partners. We reached out to, again, to organizations that we're involved with. I'm involved with several meetup groups, several tech meetup groups. So again, we created a spreadsheet. We listed the organizations that we're involved with, the meetup groups, any other groups that are even just outside of the tech community. We listed those people and we reached out to them and said, hey, we're having a hackathon this weekend. We're looking for anyone who can code, project manage, who's really great at project management, who knows how to design. Please, share this with your group members. And that was very helpful for us, getting the number of volunteers to sign up for Code Across Atlanta. If you can move to the next slide. And how do we keep those partners engaged? Well, we were successful at getting the community partners there. Again, we had seven community partners who actually signed up, submitted projects for our volunteers to work on. At the event itself, because we're so focused on getting our community partners there, we dropped the ball a little bit when we actually on event day. We had an imbalance of the volunteers signing up for some of the community partners projects, and that was kind of disappointing to some of our community partners, because they really expected more people or more developers or designers to actually sign up for their project. When we noticed that during the event, I spoke to Luigi, who's our captain. I told him that we actually need to allocate resources up front. And I've attended several different hackathons across the city, and that works best. And normally that can be done the day of the event or before the event. If you know the number of developers and designers, you can begin to allocate or assign the projects, or you can put out the projects there and have people begin to sign up for those projects beforehand, so you kind of have an idea of where the resources are going. And if you need to move developer designers to another community projects partner, then you have the flexibility to do that. Another way of doing that is actually the date of the event, and you can actually set up maybe like a huge board, and you actually put, attach the projects to the board so that people can walk by and read and quickly read or glance and see what the project is and sign up and say, I'm a developer, I'm a designer, I'm going to sign up for this particular project. And from there, we can look at the board, or you can look at the board and you can determine if you need to rebalance that so that each community partner has a fair shake or has a fair number of people to make sure that their prototype is a success by the end of the event. Another thing that we could have done a little bit better is to make sure that we inform developers and designers before we dismiss them to their community partners project. Just let them know that, hey, we may ask you to assist another group, just in case. Maybe let's say like Martyr Army, that was one of our community partners. If they needed another designer, had one designer who was stuck or maybe not as fluent with maybe animation, we could have someone move over and say, hey, can you have time? Can you assist this person or assist this group? And actually have some fluid movement between the groups if we find that there are community partners who are getting stuck with their projects. And what we did do well during that time, during the actual event, we walked around to each community partners team, and we actually asked, do you have everything that you need? Do you have all you need? Do you need another developer? Do you need another designer? Are you having any issues understanding what the prototype or the project is asking you? So just continue to walk around and find out exactly what the needs are. That was what we did very well. So my question is to you all is what would you have done if you found that there was an imbalance for your community partners projects and your volunteers, and how, and if you are actually doing that now, if you're actually allocating resources up front, and how are you doing that? And that's pretty much so how, how you keep your community partners, making sure the resources are allocated up front and actually checking in with them. And that ends my part of this presentation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Tabitha. I love how you ended with a question, and we'll make sure that it's the first one we come back to after Open Austin shares their portion on their Civic Tech Project Planning Canvas. Thanks so much.
Great. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So my name is Mateo Clark. I'm the brigade captain for Open Austin. And with me today, we're going to kind of do a handoff in the middle, is Charles Perma. He works for the city of Austin. He's a project manager for our IT or technology department. Goes by CTM, of course, an acronym. So I'm going to start and talk about kind of the event that we planned for Code Across, that is kind of like a problem framing workshop or a design thinking workshop. And then Charles is going to talk about one specific tool that we've developed to help teams kind of come up with a plan, and talk about how that's spread. I wanted to attach the playbook that we used for our Code Across event, in case anyone wanted to make suggestions or copy it and use it themselves. We definitely would love to see that. And then I'm going to kind of go through how the day went, and kind of talk about each of these activities and why they're important. So a lot of you folks might be familiar with the idea of like diverging and converging when it comes to a design thinking workshop. So it's kind of, you think about it as like gathering a bunch of ideas, distilling them down, gathering a bunch of ideas, distilling them down, and kind of massaging what's going on in the community into some actionable items. So we started with an icebreaker. If you were at a summit last year in Oakland, you know what a spectrogram looks like. It really doesn't matter what you do for an icebreaker, but it's important to like give folks the chance to like introduce themselves, give folks the chance to kind of get the temperature of the room. I think that really helps people, once they're in smaller groups, kind of understand who they are, how they fit in. And that's why we really like using the spectrograms, to make sure that people had a chance to even with a group of like 60 people, giving folks an opportunity to kind of say who they are. Then we had welcoming presentations. It's kind of like a keynote. So it's a really good opportunity to include someone from your community who might not show up, but that would come and speak. So for our example, we had the Chief Innovation Officer of the city come and give a 10-minute remark. And it's a great way for them to get in front of this community, and a great way for your community to kind of see some of the folks that are making decisions within the city. So the way our project worked is we had a variety of themes. We wanted to break things down into kind of a menu of themes. Some examples, and I'm sure a lot of these will carry over to different communities, but I'm also sure that they'll be prioritized differently. So public safety, economic opportunity, digital access, transportation, those are our themes, right? And we basically had all of these things. We kind of went through and explained what makes up this theme, what are kind of keywords or things to think about. And we had each of these themes up on the wall, and I'll show you a picture here in a second so it makes sense. And then we did this thing called actors and performances. So when you're thinking about designing a service or designing a product, you can think about the kind of this theater analogy. So you think about who are the people that are involved. So oftentimes these, you can think of them as citizens. And then what are the things that they're doing? What are the performances? You can also think about the settings, or you can think about props. So the kind of the tools they have as they're in an interaction. And so we asked everyone within each of these themes to think about some of the people that are affected within this theme, and then some of the things that they do within this theme. So if you want to switch to the next slide, it looks something like this, where you have a theme on top, and then on the left side, an actor, the actors listed out, and then the performances. And this is just like I said, kind of diverging, getting a bunch of ideas out there and giving everyone the opportunity to kind of throw their ideas out in a way that has some kind of framework. It's not just people throwing out ideas, but kind of capturing it in this way with Post-it notes. You can go to the next slide, which is just another example of what this looks like. So communication and engagement was another theme we had. And so then the next step after we've done this actors and performances exercise is that converging, right? So taking those Post-it notes, looking for patterns. So for example, maybe the theme of public safety, someone said firefighters, someone said police officers. Well, there's a lot in common between those two actors, right? So kind of looking for patterns within the Post-it notes that people threw out, physically picking them up, moving them around, grouping them, and then having a discussion with your group about what you're seeing and how those groups, or how patterns are emerging, or how people see patterns differently is really interesting too. And then from that synthesis process, you can start to form insights. And there's kind of this formula or pattern for an insight, which looks like take an actor, take a performance, and start to think about a challenge, right? So an actor is having a difficult time with whatever they're trying to do because of some challenge they're facing. So we asked, this was kind of going back to diverging, right? So we synthesized a bunch of ideas and notes down into patterns. Now we're diverging again, turning those that synthesized data, if you will, into insights. So you can go to the next slide, and here's another picture of kind of what that looks like. People rearrange, like taking the Post-it notes off of those kind of theme boards or theme canvases, if you will, and grouping them together. Next slide. And yeah, and here's discussion, right? Same idea. Okay, and so then the next slide. Okay, and so then this is kind of getting to the heart of it. All those exercises are all working towards a how might we statement or a challenge statement. And so I kind of kept the colors there. The blue is our actor, the green is a performance, and then the yellow is a challenge, right? So this is an example of a how might we statement where we're thinking about how might we help in the case of transportation issues. How might we help bus riders with cell phones find out when the bus is coming, because we know the CAT Metro app only shows scheduled arrival times and doesn't give accurate real-time information necessarily. It's just an example, and it's really similar to an insight. It's kind of flipped on its head. We've learned something through an insight, and then we turn that into a challenge statement. So then on the top row against the window there, you see a bunch of themes, and then underneath them are how might we statements. You can go to the next one. And this is just a different perspective of that. People kind of going around, looking at them and putting their name by it to indicate they want to work on that specific one. And once they've decided what challenge statement they want to work on, then we hand off this thing called the Civic Tech Planning Canvas. And so that's where I'm going to hand it off to my friend Charles. Charles, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks everyone spending some time with us today. Excited to talk about what we do here in Austin, and hopefully you guys can pick up some tips and improve upon them, and we'll keep getting better at all this stuff. So as Mateo mentioned, I'm a project manager at the City of Austin, and we are lucky to have Open Austin and such an awesome brigade here. We have a really close working relationship with them. And I'm just going to go into a little history behind this canvas before I actually talk about it, because I think it's kind of valuable. But the reason why we even came up with this is 2 years ago when that Code Across event was coming up, we got together and talked about what could we do, obviously, to improve it for that year. And we said, well, the main things that seemed to be kind of problems or hassles for us was really the teaming, like getting people on teams and really not needing to go through so much churn at the beginning. problem framing, as Mateo's been talking about, and then really how do you sustain that, the project? What all do you need to work through and think about? Because a lot of times we come up with great things at a hackathon, and then what? What do we do next? How do we sustain it? What resources do we need to have in place to make sure that it lives on just beyond that event, and a cool app or something? So we started talking about some things that we used internally at the city, and one of those things is called the business model canvas. I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with it, but it's used a lot in the startup world. So we thought, well, maybe that would be something that's helpful. We sat down and took a look at it, and again, you can Google business model canvas and see various varieties out there. But the original form of it is a little daunting and confusing, and there's various ways that people go about using it. So we stopped and said, well, we're hackers, right? We're innovators. Let's take the business model canvas and hack it. Let's change it up so it'll work for us. So a few days went by, and I kind of forgot about it, and then all of a sudden I get this email, and I open it up, and it's this beautiful redesigned canvas, and I just was totally impressed with the work. Diego Hernandez and Vanessa Sanchez were the designers that put a lot of time and thought and effort, and as you can see, it's a very well designed, beautiful product there. That's kind of how we got to this, to actually having this canvas. I can walk you through the basics of this, and then we'll show you a picture. You can get to the files and everything. You'll see at the bottom of the screen, here's the GitHub page. But this will give you all the files that you need to replicate it yourself, or to take it and hack it forward for yourselves, as well as there's resources that tell you how to use it. But it's meant to be very simple and straightforward. And as Mateo mentioned, if you already have teams, you can kind of jump right into this canvas. It's also good if you maybe don't have teams yet, and this helps you identify the people that you would need to recruit to be on a team. The canvas is meant to be fairly open and organic, and you can jump around. We do recommend when we hold these sessions that we spend a lot of time up front with the problem statement. And the activities that Mateo went through helps you really get to that point fast, really fast with those how might we statements. But we make sure people focus on that problem statement, because that kind of anchors the rest of the canvas. And the more time you spend on the problem statement, the easier the rest of the canvas goes. So we usually tell people, and make sure you got a really tight problem statement before you move on. And then we recommend people look at the users and those people that are impacted. Of course, we want to be very user-centric and put a lot of focus there. So we usually spend a lot of time, making sure people get to some really good users, and not just generic citizens, right? But citizens who ride the bus, who have cell phones that need to know when the bus is coming. You want to get fairly unique, so you have this good persona or user in mind for this solution. And then we're kind of loose then after that. Once we have a problem statement and our users, we can start to talk about the features and benefits. What exactly do you want this product, this solution, this app, whatever to do? What benefit is it going to give? How is it going to solve the problem? And then we can talk a little bit about the actual project itself. What kind of tool we're going to use to build it, design it. Is it going to be an app? Is it going to be a website? Something like that. So once we have the problem, that's a good idea of what we want the solution to work towards. Then we hop over to the other side of the canvas and talk about the logistics. And again, here it can be loose as well. So for example, we can walk through the key activities. What do we need to actually do? What do we need to have in place in order to build out this solution? And then it's always good to talk about partners. You might have people in the community, other organizations, people in the local government that you want to partner with. That really starts to go towards the sustainability of this. So if you build something and you need the city's resources, data, maybe you need the city to host it or something like that. That helps the team think through how we're going to who we need to help us keep this, keep the product or the solution up. And then finally, there's the key resources: what people, what technology, what infrastructure, what data, anything like that 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 we need to build this and sustain this. So the idea is that once you go through all these building blocks of the project, that you should have a pretty good idea of what all you need to do next steps. And what we've seen our success rate go up on projects that actually make it through and are completed. I think it was around 15 or 20% better each time we do this, or from when we started doing this. And also, again, it helps keep teams together. It helps keep the project moving beyond just the event that day, so that the teams actually take the canvas away and use it as something to keep them on track moving forward. Here's some pictures of kind of logistics, what you need if you want to use the canvas like this. In Austin, what we do is we actually print them out on big plotters, and we use our sticky notes and Sharpies, and break into teams, break into the project groups, and then have maybe a couple people float around that can just help help facilitate if someone needs to jump in and kind of move a team if they're stuck. That's always helpful as well. And then we've seen people in other places use the canvas as more of an individual. So you'll see the lady there on the screen. So she used it as individuals putting together project ideas rather than like a big team, big poster type of thing. So just think through your logistics too. If you are gonna use big posters, it's a good idea to know what your room is gonna look like. We've done this internally in the city using the posters, and we show up and there's not enough room in the room on the walls. So think through size, think through if you need, a lot of stickies, you need tape, you need a lot of Sharpies, those types of things. So when you show up the day of, you're ready to rock and roll. We've seen people take Mateo's going to talk about GitHub, but we've also seen people take their canvases then and digitize them in Trello, or there's a bunch of business model canvas tools that are already out there that you can use. Like I've said, we've seen adoption here in Austin. We've seen it. We've heard of folks in Detroit, folks in DC using it. We've actually seen it being translated into Japanese. So I guess they're using it in Japan. So we're big in Japan, I guess, finally. But really, that's supposed to be easy, straightforward. Please use it, hack it, change it. If anyone out there wants to digitize it or make an app out of it, that would be awesome as well. We'd be so happy about that. And give us any feedback, and we're definitely here for questions. If you want to use it for your event in your town, or we're happy to talk to your teams there as well. I'll turn it back over to Mateo then to talk about this year. We started to use GitHub for it.
Yeah, so Charles kind of talked about, okay, so we have a huge, 6-foot piece of paper with a bunch of sticky notes on it, and then now what? And so we've been thinking about how to, either manually, turn the sticky notes into like line items after the fact. We've seen people do similar thing with like an Excel spreadsheet. And the thing that we tried this year, and I think it worked pretty well for our Code Across event, and yeah, you can go ahead and click on it there, was basically asking folks to, with GitHub, a trick that you might not know is that if you create a file that's called issue_template.md, GitHub knows to use that markdown file so that whenever anyone creates a new issue, it's going to auto-populate the fields with what you've put down in this file. So it's a relatively new feature of GitHub that's really helpful, where you can basically create a survey out of GitHub issues. And so we did something similar for the hack canvases. So if you want to go to that other tab, Monique, we basically had people at the event as they were getting ready to present, kind of share their hack canvas and share the ideas and the problem statements they're working on, you can click on one example, maybe click one like the bike safety one, or that one's fine. Any of them are good. So yeah, you can see, we asked them to describe the solution, include links that they might not have been able to include, like on the hack canvas itself. You can keep scrolling down, and then actually like take photographs of different sections of the canvas and including it right there in the GitHub issue. And that way it lives on. You have photos to come back and reference. And then what's really cool, and the reason I suggested the bike project was because it starts a discussion. Now this is in a GitHub issue. Anyone with a GitHub account can start to make comments and say, hey, I like this idea. Oh, hey, something like this already exists in Philadelphia. We should see what they did. And so that's what you'll start to see by taking it off the wall and into GitHub. And so the main things that you need to know how to take advantage of here are just adding a custom label. So if you see on the right side of the sidebar there, there's a code cross label. You have to create your own label, and then being able to create an issue template. There's the kind of 2 GitHub hacks that you need to know, and then it's there.
Yes, I guess first we can sort of go back to Tabitha's question. I mean, she was talking about, the steps that Code for Atlanta takes in order to get community partners in the door. But one of the things that Code for Atlanta struggled with a little bit was just having the imbalance of designers and technologists when there were so many community groups. And I mean, it's great that they managed to get so many community groups in the room, but then there seemed to be a little bit of a discrepancy in terms of, the amount of people that they had attending, and then these community groups that took the time and the effort to attend and to actually engage in this event, which for a lot of them might have been maybe their first time, or maybe something that they don't do very often. And so, yeah, I guess we can sort of maybe open it up for discussion. Maybe other folks have sort of experienced this, or have thought about having this problem come up in their event coming up in 3 weeks, and maybe people have had discussions around potential solutions or ways to sort of mitigate this discrepancy that might occur.
I can jump in and. Oh, there's an echo.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I'll just take my earphones out. But the thing that was, we see the same problem, and it's really frustrating or hard whenever the projects kind of become popularity contests, and there's always projects that are more sexy or interesting to the majority of people. So I think it's really important to at the onset emphasize that there's a lot of different groups here that have important, impactful projects that need help, and to try to share, have the participants realize or be cognizant that if they're all grouping around one idea, then there's other projects that are being neglected, unfortunately. So kind of coaching the room a little bit to spread themselves out, I think, is one way to do it. Because you also want people that are passionate about each project to work on each project.
See, I tend to have a problem where there's not a lot of people showing up in the first place. So, and then when they do show up, there's often a wide breadth of technical experience. So I had the idea that I would add, and this actually worked out 2 years ago, not the last one, but training sessions on certain technologies. To offer learning and not just hacking, not just participation via expertise, because some people don't feel that they're experts, but they can learn how to be experts.
Totally, yeah. Having a variety of different activities helps a lot with that. I think another thing that we sort of always tell brigades is the importance of managing expectations. So, I think it's fantastic to get a wide range of community groups in the room, but it's also important to have a discussion with them at the beginning to emphasize the fact that, it's volunteer based, it's community based, and so we can't always control, despite our best efforts, we can't always control necessarily what people are working on. And I think just telling them that beforehand, they're usually much more understanding once they walk in the door and they sort of see how things work. Yeah, that helps sometimes.
So Paul is asking if anyone is using Hackshop.
We're using Waffle.io.
That counts.
Paul, is there a specific reason why you're asking, or are you just curious? Because I know we, before Code Across, we hosted a workshop specifically. We had someone from Waffle.io come and sort of talk through Hackshop. Yeah, it was a really well-received webinar, so I'm under the impression that a lot of people are using it, but I haven't checked in with folks specifically about that lately. Yeah, so it sounds like people are using Waffle, but they haven't quite gotten to using Hackshop at an event specifically.
Yeah, and elaborating on that, I think there's a trade-off between telling people to use a certain tool, which we kind of do with GitHub, versus letting them use the tools that they're already comfortable with and the processes they're comfortable with, especially when it's a larger group. So yeah, and like the problem we had with like even capturing our Hack Canvas stuff in GitHub is that we had to make sure that someone on each team had a GitHub account. And so every time you introduce a new tool, there's a new login and a new setup process. So there's a trade-off where we don't really necessarily know when it's best to like assign people to use a tool versus letting them use what they're already comfortable with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it ties into Paul's comment. He just wrote that, they tried Hackshop, but they didn't really get good participation. And so, that might have been one of the reasons why, but, he's curious and wondering if other people had good results from it and how they used it. Yeah, so Hawaii seems to want to push most of their projects towards using Waffle.
I feel like I'm hogging the webinar, but I wanted to make one comment, I guess, for Tabitha that stuck out in her presentation was the idea of like rejecting a project because it like didn't really fit the scope or because it needed to be an internal project. I think it's really cool that you're able to like the team that you put together is able to like recognize whenever you need to say, actually, this isn't the most appropriate project, or this would be, you would be better off approaching the project in a different way. And so I think that's kind of an interesting idea of like, or discussion topic if anyone else thinks so too. But like, how do you like narrow the scope of what a civic tech project is? How do you like reject projects gracefully that might not be within the scope of what your mission is as a brigade? And then also, how do you like tell a community partner or a government agency that comes to you and wants to try to do something that really doesn't for whatever reason fit with your event or with your brigade?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it kind of comes with experience. Depending on who's on your team, if they are a natural project manager or they are a project manager for an IT team, you pick up on those things. You really realize that, hey, I work on these projects every day in my office. This is not this is not suitable for our group. I think Nehemiah, he brought up a good point that sometimes you have a wide range of skills or a skill set that comes to that participate in the hackathon. So you kind of keep that in mind that, hey, maybe at this particular hackathon, we may not have senior level developers or a senior level designer. And if you have that experience working in your job outside of, the Code for Atlanta, you'll quickly recognize that. If you don't, depending on how you presented the hackathon to your community partner, when you ask them, who is this? It's kind of like going back to what Mateo and Charles, their canvas, their project canvas. If you go back to some of the ideas they had in there, who is this project really for? When you ask them questions like, what are your expectations for this project? When would you like to see this project go into a beta version? You start asking those types of questions, and depending on how they respond to you, you get a good feeling if this is, if it's a really good project for your event. But the main thing is really just looking through it and seeing what they're asking for, who this project is for, what are expectations, timeline for this prototype to be built and to go into beta version. And you look at that information and you'll know right away, hey, those two will be a great fit for the hackathon. We have a wide variety of variety of skills for developers. So if they happen to be teamed with a group of junior level or mid-level developers, they can handle this and get this built during the time frame. But a lot of it comes with time and experience too, recognizing right away if that is definitely an IT project that should be handled internally. I hope I answered all your questions or answered the question for you appropriately.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Luigi from Code for Atlanta. And that was a great answer, Tabitha. Another thing we use as a guideline for essentially just kind of the topic of the project is, does it serve the public or a specific community in the public? I think that's just a very easy and straightforward line to draw in the sand. When there are kind of more internal, it's with a government agency, but it's really serving their staffers. I think that's when we say, unless the project does serve the community at large or specific, maybe underserved part of the community, then we generally will reject or kindly reject those project proposals and try to direct the partner to something that is more public facing.
It's interesting that for our last hackathon, the biggest project happens to have been an art project. We wound up digging up. We had a couple of people from the museum, and several of our brigade members happen to be from GIS, and so they pulled together these highly detailed maps hand drawn by an insurance company around this time of the World's Fair, and then they put that to World's Fair, geo-rectified maps, and they created an interactive World's Fair tour using it. And it was something that they donated to the museum. So, I mean, it served the community, but it was almost not even like a software, didn't necessarily solve a problem so much as it was a art. And so that was the one that happened to be the biggest, and we still tout that project.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well,
my point was expect the unexpected.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's why it's always important to have that conversation about expectations, because it's really hard to sort of control what the community will end up working on. Cool. Well, yeah, we're pretty much out of time. So I just wanted to take the last, I just wanted to take the last minute to just thank Charles and Mateo and Tabitha for taking the time and sharing their information from their cities today. We're going to be recording this and posting it online. Sorry.
Jet lagging.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be recording this and posting it online. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions or if you want to get in touch with someone else. I'm happy to connect you. But thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time and for sharing your information today with the rest of us.